Hi.
Hello again.
We are continuing in Ray's book, In Search of Christian Freedom, the chapter An Appealing Promise Unfulfilled. And we were just about to discuss a new policy, a cynical policy, in 1990. So Ray says, a recent example of this attitude is seen in the change regarding the distribution of literature. On February 25, 1990, the announcement was made in the United States that from March 1st, 1990 onward, Watchtower literature would be distributed free, on a complete donation basis, with no specified contribution stated. In kingdom halls throughout the country, organizationally supplied information was read to witnesses, presenting this change in policy as one based on concern to greatly simplify our Christian education work and separate ourselves from those who commercialize religion. It was presented as making the literature more accessible to all persons. Thus, the entire change in policy was cloaked in wrappings of charitableness and freedom from self-interest.
What is nowhere stated is that long before the announcement was made, the Watchtower Society knew that the right of a state to tax a religious ministry's sale of religious literature had become an issue before the courts. This arose with regard to the imposition of a 6% tax by the state of California on literature distributed by the Jimmy Swaggart Ministries, Swaggart being one of the more prominent American television evangelists. The Watchtower Society, along with the National Council of Churches of Christ, the California Society for Krishna Consciousness, and other religious groups, had filed an amicus curiae, that is, friend of the court, brief, in this case urging the court to declare unconstitutional a state's thus taxing the sale of religious literature by a religious organization. On January 17, 1991, however, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a state had that right.
The following month, February 1991, the Watchtower Society issued its announcement of the change of policy to a free literature distribution. That announcement contained not one word about the matter of taxation. It conveyed to the witness membership the idea that the organization's decision had been reached purely on the basis of other charitable and selfless concerns. This is clearly cynicism in a blatant form. An article in the Atlanta Journal and Constitution of March 3, 1990, based in part on an interview with attorney for the Watchtower, Philip Brumley, Brumley, stated, quote, several Supreme Court decisions, including a recent decision ruling that California could tax literature and tapes sold by Jimmy Swaggart's ministry, convinced witness leaders to dispense with the suggested donation, Mr. Brimley said.
If the motivating factor was indeed to make the message contained in Watchtower literature more easily available to people, why is it that this free literature policy currently is limited to the United States, Canada, Germany, and Italy, all countries with a notably strong economy? Why is it not worldwide? Or, if a gradual introduction was considered advisable, why did it not see its beginning in some of the poorer countries of the world? Why would it not be first implemented in the so-called third world countries, where poverty is so extensive? If the new policy is to show that they are, quote, separate from those who commercialize religion, end of quote, why do they continue with the old policy in all these other countries? The fact is that even the word free is rather hollow when compared with the actual practice. Previously, witnesses purchased their literature at the Kingdom Hall, and when placing it with the public, asked for a specified contribution and kept the amount received to compensate for what they had spent initially to obtain it. Now they obtain the literature at the hall without directly paying for it, but a contribution box is placed alongside the literature counter, and there is an obvious sense of pressure to contribute for whatever they receive.
Then, on placing the literature with the public, they are counseled to inform the householder taking literature that a donation is acceptable for the literature, though without specifying any amount. If a donation is made, the witness is instructed that he or she should not keep that donation, thereby covering his or her cost of the literature, but should turn it in as money donated to the Watchtower Society. Thus, in many, possibly most cases, the organization is not only receiving what it received before, but actually double what it received before. When some publication is now advertised in one of the Watchtower journals, the advertisement may say nothing of a donation. However, if the reader writes in requesting the publication and does not send an accompanying donation, the headquarters practice is to have a local witness visit the individual at his home, carrying the requested publication. This method allowing for the witness to bring up the suggestion of a donation for it.
In a footnote, Ray alludes to the fact that the Worldwide Church of God, which has many, or used to have many of the similar teachings to the Watchtower, has been giving out their literature for free for decades. And then he goes on to say, simultaneously, the organization has adopted the policy of offering meals at assembly cafeterias free to those attending the assemblies. This too had a precedent. I recall in the 1970s, while I was on the governing body, that the West German government imposed a heavy tax on the Watchtower branch, stating that the cafeteria operations at assemblies were clearly profit-making operations. The equivalent of more than $1 million was raised by the German witnesses to pay for the tax. In the U.S., all those charged with the administration of assemblies, called district assembly overseers, have long been instructed that the cafeteria operation should produce sufficient profit to cover all assembly expenses. Witnesses may have thought that the monies they put in, the many contribution boxes at the assembly sites, were used to cover such expenses. But the assembly overseers were specifically told that all such contributions were to go directly to the Watchtower Society, not to be used to cover assembly expenses.
One wonders how long it will take the organization to extend these policies to the poorer countries of the world. They may possibly find that, unlike results in the economically strong countries where the policies now apply, their material return will be lessened when and if they do so. For not only would the public in those poorer countries be less likely to make donations for literature accepted, but many witnesses would find themselves financially unable to bear the expense of giving literature to people without at least being able to cover the cost to themselves. As it is, the words the organizational leadership sends out in praise of their new policy continues to ring hollow, and their failure to frankly acknowledge to the membership the factors behind the change, actually disguising the reason, remains a remarkable evidence of cynicism, a manifestation of a certain contempt for their intelligence. This is hardly the neighbor love that does unto others as one would have done to oneself.
Yeah.
I didn't know that policy didn't apply to everybody.
No. I wasn't clear about it because it happened just after we were disfellowshipped.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what it is now, but it hardly matters. The point's made here that this is not only cynical, but I would say devious.
Yeah, I would too. You know, we always assume the best. Even after we left, we still were kind of assuming the best.
So we're going to link on your screen to the building of the Watchtower Empire by really one man's
business sense.
Good sense on a business level. Nathan Knorr builds the empire of the Watchtower. And when that happened, I've noticed, reading over the old literature between, let's say, Rutherford's era and Noah and Franz's era, that there's one expression that kind of disappears completely from the literature of Rutherford's day, and that expression is big business.
Mm.
So when North took over, apparently it became inadvisable to be criticizing big business. So that link's on your screen, how he built the empire, which of course was not a snare and a racket.
No.
Like all the other churches of Christendom.
And then another link, a little more positive, is the 7 characteristics of Christ's church.
Do Jehovah's Witnesses measure up to the Acts 2 7 characteristics of Christ's church?
Mm-hmm.
And next time, loving friendship, based on this text. A true companion is loving all the time, and is a brother that is born for when there is distress.